Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and I'm still taking issue with Batman Eternal. The previous issue had Batman flying to Hong Kong, where, aided by Batman of Japan, he interrogated a crime lord who had taken over for Falcone's operations when he left to return to Gotham. On the way back, he's got a big surprise for Alfred. His daughter, who was stabbed and not left in a Hong Kong hospital for some reason, because it's much better to fly her for hours to Gotham.
Issue 10, John Layman on script, starts with a splash page of the origin of Falcone's scars. Little extra bloody just for effect and to try to justify all the drama attached to it, I'm sure. It's 5 years ago, and Catwoman is expositing on how Carmine is no longer the boss, shooting down the assumption that she's working for Penguin, who has otherwise done a good job of taking over Falcone operations. She kicks him, takes a cat statue, and leaves. However, it's not exactly explained why she scratched him. It seems a little vindictive, like Falcone did something to her personally, but if that were the case, they never mention it. Maybe it was just because he got in the way of her theft, but he and his men seemed pretty well incapacitated. She could have just taken the statue and left. It seems the only reason for it is tension for the sake of tension, which doesn't have much of a foundation. But anyway, jump to now, and Falcone says he should thank Catwoman for what he did. Not that chicks dig scars thing I mentioned in the last episode, but rather the lesson he learned that night. How, as inconsequential as Selina is, she's symptomatic of a larger problem. Gotham needs a protector, someone to maintain the city's sanity, lest it become a city of freaks and animals, madness and murder. Though the fact that he cites murder kinda shows how self-unaware this guy is. Juxtaposed to this is Professor Pig and an animal-headed crew who he'd probably write off as interns, killing a pair of bodyguards. Catwoman tells her captor that Batman is the city's protector, and the gangster smacks her with what must be telekinesis the way she flies around on that chair. Carmine says that Batman protects the freak status quo and is weaker than Falcone was told, given how he's losing allies and control of the city.
Saying he's lost allies seems pretty hyperbolic. Yes, Gordon is in jail. That's a terrible gut punch. But other than that, he's argued with a couple of his sidekicks, and his relationship with the cops has always been tense. There's no indication that if trouble started a-brewing that Batman's allies wouldn't jump into action. So there's no real reason to say he's lost them. And on top of that, Bard is working against the two factions in the gang war, so Batman technically has an ally in him.
Instead of elaborating on that weaker remark, Carmine declares he's going to take Gotham back. All the animals will be going back in their cages. That's going to be officially awkward in 3, 2, 1. Pig and his crew enter, and we cut to later at Wayne Manor in this 2-page spread. Alfred says Julia wants to leave, but Bruce states that SRR agents aren't known for showing weakness. Anyone else would likely be on the mend for weeks. When Alfred tries to offer her some soup, she rudely addresses Wayne, thanking him for letting her recuperate in his house, and Batman for helping her. Yet she insists on leaving, until her injuries make her consider otherwise. Bruce reminds her that Alfred is a seasoned combat surgeon, and aware she may be of her injuries, the matter is settled.
A few ground rules, though. Don't go in the basement. Try not to bleed on anything that looks expensive. And if any of my emus get out, don't try and catch them. I have people for that. I'm very rich.
Jason Todd is out in the hall, having let himself in, something Bruce repeats twice, making it seem kind of like dialogue filler. Bruce called him in to keep an eye on Barbara, who's growing increasingly obsessed with clearing her father's name. Can't imagine why. He's afraid she'll go to dangerous lengths even Batman wouldn't dare. Given that Todd knows all about rage and overcoming it, despite not knowing how to be an interesting character, Bruce wants him to shadow Batgirl in South America to keep her from getting killed. Jason, showing the non-existent emotional range that Zack Snyder only dreams about, figures it may be fun and leaves to await further details. Alfred approaches with some unsettling news about a friend of Bruce's.
Caped friend, socialite friend, dead friend. I'm a detective, Alfred. Give me a clue.
There's a gathering outside Falcone's location, where Vicky Vale again meets with Jason Bard. Word is that Pig has Carmine hostage and intends to turn him into a man-animal hybrid. Bard can't comment on that, though quietly says it's a man-bird hybrid. Pig seems to have confused Falcone with Falcon.
Yeah, I always made that mistake when I was a kid and watched that Hanna-Barbera cartoon, The Blue Falcone and Dino Mutt.
We see a newscopter getting footage of Pig restraining Falcone, and there are reports of an unidentified woman. However, Forbes has ordered the cops to stay back. Bale asks if he'd like to comment on Falcone's criminal connections or his alleged role in the gang war, but Bard declines. All that matters now is ending the situation without any further loss of life. She's dead, boss. 100% positive. Dead.
Oh, come on, Caption. What did I just say? Jeez.
No, that bit of dialogue came from one of Cluemaster's goons. Apparently, well, I guess they're supposed to be different colored periods in an ellipses. I mean, don't get too attached to them. You never see these guys again. Which raises the question, why bother giving them any kind of gimmick if they're only seen twice? And the last time we saw them, they were white. Did they feel the need to add some color for their second and final appearance? Anyway, the green one is saying that after a few hundred rounds, they definitely killed the nosy little snot. Cluemaster apparently takes some offense, saying that this was still his daughter and they should show some respect. Says the guy that pulled a gun on her while belittling her existence. I'm sure it's supposed to make Arthur Brown seem all complex, but it just seems more like lackluster characterization. Anyway, if Steph is dead, it raises two questions. Why was her name not on the list the Gotham Gazette printed of the shooting victims? And who was the one posting online articles about the villainous Cluemaster, Gotham's latest threat?
She wrote a snarky article for Cracked. We're doomed!
Sure enough, Stephanie is posting information from the Gotham County Library, saying she knows her dad's plans, and I'm going to do everything I can to spoil them.
How clever.
The library is closing, and the librarian asks, with all the time Steph's been spending there, if she has a place to live. Steph assures her that she does, just omits that it's the library air vents. This is a good example of showing more with less. We find out how Steph has been getting by and the lengths she'll go to not only thwart her father, but stay alive. Though why this is explained in dialogue that any other characters could hear is perplexing. We can see what's going on, no need to get clever with the one and the same remark. Back to Falcone. I'm sure he's just ecstatic that Forbes let Professor Pig go because Batman caught him. Now he's subject to the latest in his twisted experiments. Great judgment calls all around. Carmine's threats fall on deaf ears as Pig recalls the destruction of his lab and is going ahead with the surgery. But he's perplexed about what to do with Catwoman. He wonders a bit before calling for his tools and maybe a few dozen cat heads.
Check with the people for the ethical treatment of animals. Tell them it's me and they'll hook you up.
Light shines through the skylight, and it's not the newscopters that they ordered away, but Batman gliding in on another splash page, taking out some hybrids and somehow freeing Catwoman and Falcone simultaneously. The farmhands are subdued, then Pig himself, with Catwoman getting a quick slug on Falcone. Despite the unfinished business, a phrase that's not at all tired at this point, half the GCPD are on their way, so Batsy hastens their exit.
All you'll do is give him another set of scars to complain about, and we'll be doing this all over again in 5 years.
With the Dark Knight confirmed on the scene, Forbes orders Bard to send officers in immediately, with shoot-to-kill orders. Bard complies, give or take a couple Mississippis. Officers arrive too late to catch the Bat, and Falcone says the other hostage was a petty thief. Having escaped on the back glider, Bats and Catwoman stop at a rooftop, where the latter tells the Dark Knight that Falcone let something slip, as if he had been fed information of possible events and he had returned to Gotham to take advantage. The Roman was just another piece of the puzzle. When asked who he thinks may be responsible, Batman replies, "That's the question, Catwoman. Who?" As we see a shadowy figure watch from what could be a gargoyle.
This moment right here is actually very subtle and very clever as it pertains to the rest of the series. Unfortunately, cleverness and subtlety are not as consistent in the rest of the series.
Issue 11, Tim Seeley on script, starts with a brief look at someone in Gotham going to a cemetery in the rain, and reading a letter left at a grave. Then we jump to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, on the set of an Egyptian-themed TV show. The star is down, his understudy hoping that he's dead, and for some reason the director has no pants. Batgirl is tussling with one of the extras while something goes crack. Not sure what, though. Gonzalo Dominguez, the intended target of both women, awakes and explains to his shapely co-star that the extra is actually Scorpiana from the Club of Villains. Her plans were thwarted when Batgirl bataranged his scorpion-filled headdress away from him. Asked about why supervillains were after him, Gonzalo blames being really famous, then takes off, with Scorpiana stating the beautiful coward had outlived his usefulness to the club.
This excuse actually has historical precedence. Joseph Stalin tried to take out John Wayne for his anti-communism stance, and Adolf Hitler had it out for Clark Gable and Charlie Chaplin. Which is really stupid because it was Hitler who stole Charlie's mustache.
Batgirl decides to cut the combative middleman and clubs Scorpiana with a prop and goes after Gonzalo. Realizing this job isn't as simple as she figured, Scorpiana decides to suit up and continue her pursuit. We jump to Wayne Manor, where Alfred is presenting an early lunch to Julia while she's finishing up some one-armed pull-ups. He begins cutting off the crusts from her sandwich, but Julia dismisses it as an affectation from when she was a little girl, and sets out to wherever her job needs her.
Uh-oh. Alfred, call tech support. Don't try rebooting. You're in a DC comic, and when they reboot lately, it doesn't turn out well.
Alfred would prefer Julia to stay, but according to her, when her folks split, Alfie chose the Waynes and wanted nothing more to do with her. Alfred says he tried to see her several times, but that it was Julia that made it clear she didn't want anything to do with him, and maybe it was also out of shame. Julia says he used to fix soldiers, but now he fixes garments for a spoiled toff, and instead of serving the greater good, he serves tea and biscuits. And before she can finally storm out into the rain, it looks as though she's bleeding again.
Kids open the darndest stitches.
Stephanie's at the library, and, well, these first couple of panels are kind of weird. Someone's clearly inside the library talking to her, but she's also in the process of walking into the library. Guess it's an error that nobody noticed. Anyway, Steph is requesting information on Cluemaster, and the librarian comes up with some old nudes clippings, a Warren Spacey retrospective, and some game show footage. Steph claims it's for a school report, but the librarian doesn't care as long as she's not one of them Joker fanatics. Steph marvels at how young and uncool her father looked as the host of Quiz Bowl, a show sponsored by Ace Chemicals. Because I'm sure that product placement will be important to the story and isn't just a tongue-in-cheek Joker reference/connection. This particular episode is to benefit the 0-Year Reclamation Fund, meaning it takes place a few years before the New 52 #1 issue, probably 5.2 years given DC's unhealthy fixation on the number 52. Anyway, the guests are talk show host Rick Pimento, Bruce Wayne, whoever that is, and fashion mogul London Laganza. Arthur grows increasingly irritated when Laganza responds to the first question with joke after joke, until he loses his cool and calls her another spoon-fed, overprivileged, irrelevant airhead.
And yet no comment on how many 1970s-era Ottomans were killed to make her clothes.
Back in Brazil, Gonzalo is looking for a place to hide in the studio. A body painting room with some Zoftig admirers won't do, so Batgirl throws him into a green room. He seems grateful for her intervention until she grabs his throat and demands to know his role in a train crash that left hundreds dead, though that seems grammatically incorrect as the death toll was under 200, and Gotham's best cop in the slammer. She shows him footage of him at the subway, and Dominguez says it isn't him. Looking like his eyes are about to escape his skull, he says he was indebted to the Club of Villains, and in lieu of monetary payment, they sent him to a Dr. Mangaravite, who used steel insects to crawl on and inside his skull so that an associate of the club could later wear his face.
Buddy, I'm from Gotham. That is literally the oldest excuse in the book.
As Scorpiana makes her way past the admirers, we're sent back to Wayne Manor, where Julia actually compliments her father on the restitching of her wounds. Alfred explains that Bruce genuinely cares for Gotham and wants the likes of Carmine Falcone locked up. If it's cool with the SRR, she can stay and be provided with whatever she needs. Alfred can spend time with her and even assist in her missions, because patching up soldiers isn't something he's forgotten. It's like riding a bike. A bike that bleeds, screams a lot if you don't use enough anesthetic, and won't be ambulatory if you mess up. Back to the library, Steph is typing up a new blog about her father's secret origin. Arthur Brown was offended that lesser minds prospered while his family got by on food stamps. So he became the Clue Master, utilizing high-tech plastic pellets of his own invention and intentionally leaving clues because he was so sure of his superior intelligence. We even see that an earlier design of his suit harkens back to his pre-Flashpoint iteration. He managed to outwit the police, but not Batman, because he tackles Riddler puzzles and Joker schemes, so someone purposely leaving clues is child's play. One night when she was younger, Steph was stirred by Batman confronting Arthur at home. While Ian Bertram's art isn't exactly my cup of ginger ale, I do like this imagery. Batman appearing as a kind of monster to a small child seeing her father getting attacked. Steph says she figured it was a dream the next day and forgot the events until recently. Arthur promised a sympathetic-looking Batman that Clue Master was done since his family was all he had. But in the here and now, Steph feels that Arthur Brown was Clue Master's biggest lie, and she, just another accomplice.
Honestly, I'm kind of mixed on this, because, sure, right now, her origin doesn't seem too dissimilar to her original one. It's a little different, but not insanely stupid like so many other reinventions we've seen from the New 52. She still wants to put an end to her father's schemes. She so far just wants to spoil his plans. But so far, it's okay. But with these blog posts, I feel they're problematic. And for the sake of better context, I'll expand on that later in the review.
Scorpiana closes in on her quarry. As Batgirl takes them out a window, the villainess was convenient enough to shatter, and begins swinging away. Gonzalo finds there are scorpions on him and struggles to brush them off, causing Batgirl to lose her grip, and he falls onto a spaceship piloted by Starfire. As Coriander takes Dominguez to a Belize safe house, Scorpiana is subdued by El Guacho, the Batman of Argentina. Batgirl angrily demands Gonzalo back, but Red Hood, coincidentally on the same rooftop, explains that at the time of the train crash, the actor was in mandated rehab in Bogota. Information easily found with a little legwork, but Batgirl missed it because her obsession was making her sloppy. She's punching everything in sight, and that's more of a Red Hood thing.
Really? I thought the Red Hood thing was to be unlikable, irredeemable, and not have writers know what personality to give you. Also, why is your mask smiling?
Back at the Gotham Cemetery, the contents of the letter are shown to us in captions, explaining how hard the world must be for the recipient without a friend and without Lola McIntyre, whose grave it was left at. The writer insists he truly loved Lola, and she was the only person he could trust to look after Selina after the Kyles failed him. Hint, hint, Selina's who's reading it. The writer can't be with her in her time of need, and the letter on a grave was the only sure way to find her. This will be one of the writer's biggest regrets, and hopes Selina keeps him in his heart as he keeps her in his. Love, your father.
Well, this is the New 52, so her father is probably Killer Moth? Because who cares about making sense anymore?
Batman happens to be there, standing in front of an angel statue, and Selina asks for a light. He obliges with a gadget, and she uses it to burn the letter. As the issue comes to a close, Bat says he knows she's scared after what Falcone did, but Selina tells him to stop worrying about her. She's never had and doesn't need a daddy.
But who did you make amorphous clay coffee mugs for on Father's Day?
Issue 12, script by James Tynion IV, features a cover with Batman indulging in a little-known guilty pleasure, narrating to himself. The police try to catch Batman, but he's too awesome! After he's done saving the world, he's going to go home to his mansion and have ice cream for dinner.
What? Relatively speaking, it'd be one of the least stupid changes made in the New 52.
Moving on, the Roman is ordering no mercy against Penguin's forces and reminds us that he controls the Commissioner, because if we can't see Forbes, we can't tell he's corrupt. Jump ahead 3 nights to Jason Bard's apartment. updating Maggie Sawyer and Harvey Bullock about his own investigation into the gang war. Going over this scene again, I was a little perplexed, and after a little research, I found out that Rhodes, the speedster helping Carmine against Professor Pig, and Roadrunner are actually the same dude, which I didn't really notice before. And I guess he somehow survived that big explosion? We'll have to assume he used super speed because you know the comic isn't going to get into it. Anyway, Maggie points out that there's enough evidence gathered by Bard to put away both kingpins, but they all know that Forbes won't let the GCPD even acknowledge the gang war. It just so happens Bard has a plan for that, even if it is a little bit crazy.
I'm going to need a gallon of wood glue, 3 porcelain tiger figurines, a hot air balloon, and no less than 7 gophers trained in origami.
Jim Gordon is led to a police transport where one guard hopes he fries because his sister was crippled in the train accident, something for which Gordon apologizes. Inside the truck, Jim takes notice of the guard with him. Not to be a critic, Batman, but if you're trying to pass for Officer Smitty, you should seem a little less attentive to your job.
So, like the writers and editors on this series?
Batguard has showed up because, as twisted as the Gotham justice system can get, people need to see Jim as innocent. A nice enough sentiment, but Gordon is committed to standing before a jury of his peers no matter the outcome. It's again mentioned that hundreds died in the train crash, but I still don't think that's technically true. The number is 162, and that's less than 200. But hey, maybe they just thought hundreds, plural, was more dramatic. At Gotham General Hospital, Harper Row is talking to her comatose brother Cullen, saying that she told their dad, incarcerated at Blackgate, about the boy's condition. It wasn't a happy conversation, with Papa Row saying Cullen should buck up, and then hanging up when Harper started yelling. Harper decides that Red Robin is going to help her get Cullen out of this, so through some hacker speak that sounds enough like it could be accurate, she manages to locate RR because he took over her special computer at some point. I guess. At least that's how she seemed to put it. And that let her trace a hole in the system and run it through all the city networks to track him. I mean, we're given no context that Red Robin ever took over Harper's computer for her to exploit anything, so either it happened off-panel and is mentioned super glibly, or she's just really super good at computering. It could go either way with this series. And since coma patients sometimes respond to familiar voices, she can brag about how awesome she is out loud for more than just her ego's sake. Anyway, Red R is visiting the locked-up and still masked Professor Pig, while Harper accesses a cloud-based crime-fighting database more advanced than anything she's seen Batman used. She finds Red Robin's location at the GCPD headquarters when his systems alert him to the intrusion. Before she can ascertain his base, Red Rob shuts her out, zapping both Pig and Harper's laptop. He has his systems run full diagnostics. I need to know how she did that. Now!
You can ask the question. Don't expect this book to answer it.
We check in with Batgirl in Brazil, with Red Hood telling her that Batman asked him to watch her back. She feels understandably insulted, who would want Red Hood on their team anyway, because Batman never chose her like he did his other sidekicks, and she'll never measure up. But Hood says it's not about that. It's about keeping her from going overboard in trying to clear her father. In her anger, she missed key evidence, and they need to do this right. Begrudgingly accepting Hood's help, Barb asks the time as she drops down to a waiting bat cycle. It's 11:52 because it has to be something 52, and her dad's trial is starting. They've only days to absolve him.
Goody! Now, later, Red Hood can insinuate he slept with Batgirl, and then retcon it so that he just made that story up when readers realize just how stupid a pairing they make.
At the trial, the prosecutor tells the jury that for all of Jim Gordon's heroics, his fight against corruption, to prove that there's goodness in the city without using a disguise, even the fact that he is a good man, it doesn't matter. This is about justice, and justice doesn't care about the good or evil of someone, just their actions. Because, hey, is that Judge Lex Luthor? Jeez, Jim doesn't stand a chance. Anyway, for firing on an unarmed man, resulting in 162 deaths and 30 more critically injured, the jury must follow Gordon's example of proving the justice system works, even if it means imprisoning a hero. And it looks like Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are here too.
And here this story goes again, telling us something it should have shown us. In this case, the 30 injured who survived the train crash. Now, granted, that 30 does bring the total number closer to 200, but not quite at 200. So I think using hundreds, plural, is still grammatically incorrect. Unless someone can show me how it is correct.
Outside the courthouse. Wait, what?
Not even a single panel devoted to Gordon's defense? What is this? Do you think readers should just forget about that plot hole with the electrical box just because you did?
Anyway, Joey Day is telling Vicky Vale about how the prosecutor destroyed Gordon's opening statement that we never saw, because telling is just as good as showing, especially when telling is really, really short and vague. Vicky says that despite media attention like cameo Lois Lane, the real story is the gang war everyone is ignoring, including the cops. Lieutenant Bard interjects, wondering how she'd feel if one such cop had a plan to get things back on track.
Would you perhaps want to make out with that cop? Where are you going?
At Wayne Manor, Julia rehashes, almost verbatim, her tea and biscuits argument to Alfred, who explains he's far more fulfilled than previously in life. Julia still feels the need to hammer in how perplexed she is by stating Alfred's ranking as one of the British Army's top medics and performed with Basil Carlo before his fame, and likely before Clayface. If they insist on keeping up this everyone's connected to everyone bit, I'll start suspecting George Lucas has an uncredited role in the New 52. And no, that wouldn't be a good thing. Tim Drake bursts in, babbling about not being warned about the Row Girl and how his network was hacked, only to stop himself for an awkward greeting with Julia. He instantly recognizes her as military, because of course he's stupid enough to just blurt something like that out, while wondering aloud what she's doing there like she's an intruder. New 52 Tim is a jerk and an idiot. After being surprised at whose daughter Julia is, Alfred excuses them both and tries to pass off his ranting as girl trouble. Julia is not a complete moron, however, and tries following them, but they seem to have lost her in between the thin panel gutters. Again, I know panel spacing can be an issue, but this is like they literally vanished into thin air. A smaller panel in between, with them turning a corner, would make the disappearance less magical. They've taken to the Batcave, where Alfred explains that Julia's mother didn't want him involved in her daughter's life. Which is different from what we were told before, but okay, whatever. Tim says that she must be SRR based on her stance, which feels really flimsy. Rather than showing us what she's capable of, we'd rather just have people impressed with how she stands. Alfred changes the subject to the charming young girl that once saved Batman's life, because in the New 52, even words like charming were rebooted to no longer resemble their previous definition. Tim seems out of the loop and says he wants to know everything.
Everything? Well, she's half ripped off from Stephanie Brown, and she's nowhere near as endearing or entertaining. There. That's everything.
At the roof of the Beacon Tower, Bullock and Bard are waiting on Batman. Bullock recalls that in the days before the Bat Signal, and shortly after Zero Year, Gordon would call a number to get Batman to show up at the roof of the station, and how back then there were 3 people looking to take down Falcone and make things right in Gotham. Jim Gordon, Batman, and Harvey stopped before saying Dent when Batman appears. Rude. It's ascertained that Gordon entrusted the Bat number to Bullock in his exchange with Batman. Bard is along because he says he can end the gang war by week's end. Bats is skeptical, but Harvey assures him the kid ain't kiddin'.
Oh yeah? Why call him a kid if he's not kidding? Wow, that's paranoid even for me.
One little detail, though. It'll have to involve the police catching the Dark Knight.
Pokeballs don't work on Batman. Ow!
Gordon is awoken from his sleep in his cell in Blackgate, told about having a visitor and exceptions being made by the warden, but none of that is adding up for Jimbo. So the guard decides to cut the treacle and starts beating the former commissioner, dragging him into a room where his visitor awaits. His son. James Jr.? You're alive?
But Batgirl bataranged you in the eye, saving my ex-wife, and knocking you into the water without any body ever being found. How could that possibly mean you weren't dead? And don't tell me we have to wait a week to find out, because that would be as annoying as...
Oh, come on!